It's been a full day and soon a full night of Senate questioning for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, who, if confirmed, as you know, will be the first black woman on the Supreme Court. But with Democrats clearly having the votes to get her through, for Republicans, today was less about her considerable qualifications. Harvard Law School grad who served as a federal district, an appellate court judge, public defender, member of the U.S. Sentencing Commission, and more about scoring political points and, I guess, settling old scores.
What faith are you, by the way? Could you fairly judge a Catholic? Well, how would you feel if a senator up here said, your faith, a dogma, lives loudly within you, and that's of concern? How would you feel if somebody up here on our side said, you attend church too much for me, or your faith is a little bit different to me, and they would suggest that it would affect your decision? Would you find that offensive?
Senator,
I would if I were you. I found it offensive when they said it about Judge Barrett.
Critical race theory frames all of society as a fundamental and intractable battle between the races. It views every conflict as a racial conflict. Do you think that's an accurate way of viewing society in the world we live in?
Senator, I don't think so.
Is critical race theory taught in schools? Is it taught kindergarten through 12th?
Senator, I don't know. I don't think so. I believe it's an academic theory that's at the law school level.
But throughout, Judge Jackson made it clear she's not in this to play politics nor to set policy.
I am acutely aware that as a judge in our system, I have limited power. And I am trying in every case to stay in my lane.
Joined by Njeri Rutledge, she's a law professor at South Texas College of Law in Houston, who attended Harvard Law with Judge Jackson, who was at today's hearing. It's so good to see you again. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so jealous that you were in the room yesterday and today, limited attendance. What's the atmosphere like at a moment like this when you're physically there?
The first day felt electric. It actually wasn't very crowded the first day. I think I was able to get in at 3 o'clock, which was the perfect timing because I got to hear Professor Lisa Fairfax's introduction. I went to law school with Lisa as well. Of course, Lisa is one of her roommates. And I got to hear Judge Jackson. And I have to say, once Judge Jackson raised her right hand and took the oath, I felt very emotional. Even though I've known this was going to happen, it really felt real, and the weight of it all was really quite moving.
You know, not surprisingly, every Democrat who I saw today during the 30 minutes was very supportive. How would you characterize the Republican line of questioning today?
Very disappointing.
Why?
I think despite the fact that they said they were going to do a fair hearing, and it wasn't going to be a circus, it seems like they have engaged in a smear campaign, calling Judge Jackson a defender of terrorists, and she is soft on crime and soft on child pornography and all of those ridiculous things. It's highly offensive because Judge Jackson is a mother. She has been a federal judge for over a decade, and she has a proven record of being fair, even-handed, and upholding the rule of law and the Constitution. And so all of those narratives, it was really a form of political theater, as if they're trying to rehearse for the midterms, as they get ready to call all Democrats and all progressive prosecutors soft on crime. I think that's very disappointing and a disservice to the American people, because we can't know more about Judge Jackson if they're so busy settling old scores and trying to do their pre-campaign speeches.
You know, by the way, Chuck Todd from Meet the Press was on a radio show the other day and said, very much in anticipation of this, said it's going to be like cross-examining Biden for the midterms. If they could blame Judge Jackson for inflation, they would do that too. And I'm going to leave what the insurrectionist supporter Hawley had to say yesterday about child pornography, because obviously his facts were completely BS. However, there was a lot of criticism of two Republican senators today asking the judge about using the term war criminals. And both times she said, referencing Rumsfeld and President Bush, both times she said she didn't recall the exact language. And while there's been a lot of criticism online for those questions, I looked it up. She did say in a brief that their actions constituted war crimes. So that's fair game, is it not? She's entitled to answer, and that's fact-based. They're entitled to ask, aren't they?
I think it is fair game as long as it's not taken out of context.
Right.
There's a difference between saying your actions are going to amount to war crimes versus you're a war criminal. And I think they tried to say that she called the president a war criminal.
Yes, they did.
Which is a little bit much. It's also a bit disingenuous in light of the way habeas corpus review worked during that time. Most of the time when people were released from Guantanamo Bay, it was because of the Department of Defense and the military tribunal. And so to try to put all of that on her shoulders and talk about recidivism and you're just letting them out so they can terrorize the country again is really a stretch and a mischaracterization.
Yesterday, Senator Blackburn brought up critical race theory and, again, misrepresented something that Judge Jackson had said in a speech about what she does, what she incorporates into her thinking when she is doing sentencing, suggesting critical race theory as part of it. You just heard, actually, your law school classmate, not only Judge Jackson, Ted Cruz, bringing up critical race theory again, taking it to the point that did you know whether it's taught in grades X through Y? What was your reaction to that?
I don't know what the reaction is of the general American people.
How about
I was not in the room.
How about you, I'm asking?
I was outraged. I'm so tired of, it's really quite brilliant how the Republicans can take a term and make it such a hot button issue, like critical race theory, like like assuming that everyone who's a Democrat is soft on crime. Critical race theory, as Judge Jackson accurately described, is something that we talked about in law school. It's not something that we're teaching in K through 12. In K through 12, we should be talking about history of all people, including Black history. But it's become such a hot button issue when Ted Cruz and Marsha Blackburn talk about critical race theory in a Supreme Court nomination hearing. They're just trying to talk to their constituents. That has nothing to do with Judge Jackson. Judge Jackson is not a politician. She's not responsible for policy. If they want to ask her about how she views the Constitution, that's fair game. But to talk about things like critical race theory, what's next? Gas prices?
Well, I have a feeling that gas prices were not really where they were going. I think it may have reflected their conundrum about the fact this is a Black woman. And while they all went out of their way to say how charming this Black woman was and how thrilled they were to meet her, there was also a question where the only other question I heard that was specifically, I thought, about race was when Senator Cornyn from Texas asked the question whether she celebrated when Clarence Thomas was nominated. And she paused and she said, "I believe I did." Were you surprised by that answer from the judge?
No, Judge Clarence Thomas's nomination was very complicated for the Black community because he was replacing Justice Thurgood Marshall, just like Justice Amy Coney Barrett replaced Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Yeah. And they were totally different people. And so while I'm sure there was a part of everyone, and, I actually have worked with people who know Justice Thomas personally, and they say really great things about him as an individual. And so, he is an African-American judge with a different ideological background, and we are not a monolithic group. So for that and his achievements, of course you would celebrate him.
Well, I don't know if Anita Hill would agree about what a great person he is, but I was...
I'm not, and not just Anita Hill, there's several other people who
who didn't get to testify. Yeah.
But putting that aside, I think she has been on record by saying that she doesn't fully understand him. And I think that's true for many people.
Njeri, one last thing. As you know, and I assume most viewers know, 3 Republicans voted for her for lower court nominations, Murkowski from Alaska, Collins from Maine, and Lindsey Graham. If Judge Jackson becomes a justice of the Supreme Court because of only Democratic votes, with the vice president, I think for the first time in history, casting the deciding vote, does that compromise her effectiveness, her credibility on the court?
It will not compromise her effectiveness or credibility. It will be seen as a slap in the face for a brilliant justice, a brilliant judge who is very qualified and who is very fair and who has received bipartisan congressional support on 3 separate occasions. Yes. For us to have to get to the point where Kamala Harris has to cast the deciding vote would be very bittersweet. In one sense, she's going to be the next Supreme Court justice regardless. On the other hand, how dare they deny this brilliant jurist the opportunity to be on the court? The stakes in many ways are low. They're going to keep their super conservative majority. She is qualified. She's been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, yes, Republicans, Democrats. So I would find it very offensive and troubling if they just took the party line and said no.
Qualified she is. Njeri Rutledge, it's great to see you as always. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.